Excellencies, distinguished guests and friends, welcome to the Track 2 Conclave on India-Georgia relations. This conclave is being organized by Tillotoma Foundation in partnership with Geocase, who is the strategic partner for this conclave. Tillotoma Foundation is a global think tank working in the areas of international relations, area studies, financial, environmental, scientific, strategic and defense policy. I'm Tanisha Acharya from Tillotoma Foundation. The distinguished speakers for today are Ambassador Achal Kumar Malhotra, former Indian Ambassador to Georgia and Armenia, Dr. Emil Avdaliani, Director of Middle East Studies, Geocase, Dr. Meena Singh Roy, Head, West and Central Asia Center, Tillotoma Foundation, Dr. Baqar Palavandishvili, Deputy Chairman, Geocase. Let me specially thank the respective organizational leaders, Ms. Kamakshi Vason, Vice President of Tillotoma Foundation, and Mr. Victor Kipiani, Chairman, Geocase, for their gracious presence. Due to technical error, I will be reading out Ms. Kamakshi Vason, Vice President, Tillotoma Foundation's address too. So I'm pleased to welcome all of you to this Track 2 Conclave on India-Georgia relations. Tillotoma Foundation has a special focus on the Eurasia region, including Central Asia and South Caucasus. We are glad to have Geocase as the strategic partner for the conclave. Let me thank my friend, Mr. Victor Kipiani, Chairman of Geocase, and his colleagues at Geocase for their support in putting up this conclave. I also specially thank all the distinguished speakers from both sides. Mr. Soham Das, Director, Tillotoma Foundation, played an important role in conceptualizing and planning this Track 2 conclave on India-Georgia relations. India and Georgia have had historical links since ancient times. This partnership promises great potential. There is a need to build on the economic aspects of the partnership as well as on the people-to-people contact. The recent visits of Dr. S. Jaishankar, Honorable Minister of External Affairs of India to Georgia in July 2021 to hand over the holy relics of Saint Queen Ketevan has given a special boost and a fresh impetus to the bilateral relations. There are already several kinds of cultural, educational, and economic cooperation ongoing between India and Georgia. A very positive sign is that both sides seem very enthusiastic about this partnership. This Track 2 conclave comes at a very crucial moment in the bilateral relations between India and Georgia. The major themes of the conclave are India-Georgia bilateral political relations and prospects, India and South Caucasus, realities and expectations, economic aspects of the India-Georgia bilateral cooperation, trade between the two countries, prospects for free trade agreement, and investment in hydropower, agro, etc. I'm sure we will have a very interesting and relevant discussion today at this Track 2 conclave, which will help in strengthening the bilateral partnership. Let me now request Mr. Kipiani, the co-moderator for today's conclave, to proceed.
Thank you so much indeed, and my pleasure to introduce myself and my pleasure to team up for this very fast inauguration event with our dearest colleagues from Tillotoma Foundation, and thank you so much indeed for all your efforts to set up this very fast event, which would and hopefully will contribute to boosting partnership and good spirit cooperation between our two countries. We are very glad to be present here. I should thank all and every of our distinguished speakers to attend these discussions. And I also very much hope that these discussions would be a kickoff event for many discussions with our colleagues from Tillotoma Foundation in the near future. So we very much look forward to hearing distinguished colleagues and speakers on various issues of Georgian Indian policy and partnership, and on Indian policy in the South Caucasus. You mentioned very rightly that we're having this event right after the recent visit of India's external affairs minister, which was the very first visit by Indian foreign minister to Georgia since independence of Georgia from the Soviet Union. The visit involved meetings with various Georgia's political leaders, with conversations that covered not just bilateral, but also regional issues of building better connectivity between our two countries. There is still there are many things business one. There is much to be done in terms in terms of increasing our business ties. So all in all, I think that there is quite an interesting history of collaboration at multilateral fora as well. This includes Georgia's support of India's successful candidature of non-permanent membership of the United Nations Security Council. But as I've said, there are multiple areas, and I think that this conversation and these discussions would be qualitatively new attempts to find out where the gaps are and how those gaps could or should be addressed. Without much ado, it's my pleasure to introduce and to give the floor to His Excellency, Ambassador Achal Kumar Malhotra. Your Excellency, thank you so much indeed for your time to accept our invitation, and with your Georgian expertise and knowledge on Georgian and Indian matters, I very much look forward to hear your valuable views and assessments. Thank you, Ambassador, and look forward to it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. In fact, participating in this conclave makes me nostalgic about the 3 wonderful years I spent as India's ambassador to Georgia. And I have a very pleasant memories of those days. So in view of the limited time available at our disposal, I won't go much into the, semantics and quickly come to the point. Well, I think India was quite quick in recognizing Georgia and the other 2 countries in the region after the disintegration of the Soviet Union in 1991, and also in the establishment of diplomatic relations. But thereafter, the relations have progressed almost at a snail's pace, overall with the region, as well as particularly with Georgia. And I think there were multiple reasons, but I would like to point out 2 major reasons. One, of course, was Georgia's emphasis on its West-oriented foreign policy. Basically, it's from the day one, Georgia wanted to be integrated into the Euro-Atlantic structures, meaning European Union and NATO. And I think that probably was or should have been the reason for India also not to give too much of attention towards Georgia and the other countries in the region. One of the various reasons. And the other important factor, of course, was the Russia factor, because in 2005, 2006, 2007, when Georgia's relations with Russia were on the downslide, I think that was a time when India's relations with Russia were on the ascendancy, ultimately culminating into a strategic partnership. Therefore, somehow willy-nilly, India's policies toward Georgia got hyphenated with Russia, and obviously India was not ready to do anything which would displease Russia, because Russia and Georgia were, at the worst of their relationship during that period. But the good thing is, there are 2 good things have happened. One is, of course, irrespective of the relatively low political level of relationships between India and Georgia for many years in the past, the trade and economic relations, they have progressed, on their own. And probably they have not been influenced. In other words, the market forces have played an important role, and they have prevailed over the political considerations. And as a result, we have had some investments made by the Indians into the region, even though small, about $400–500 million. But Indians have also participated in some infrastructure projects. And there has been some trade also, again, not much, not even far below $1 million. But at the same time, in the recent years, or in the recent months at least, we have seen some very positive, indicators, which show inclination on the part of the two countries to work together, to move together, and upgrade their relationship. This was particularly reflected in the recent visit of Dr. S. Jaishankar, the External Affairs Minister of India, to Georgia, which you rightly pointed out is the first ever visit by an Indian minister to Georgia. So that opens up the avenues for, that makes us optimistic about the future of the relationship between the two countries. Also, there has been some palpable, notable, movement as far as the established mechanisms are concerned, Foreign Office consultations, or the intergovernment commission meetings. They are now being held more periodical. Their periodicity has increased. They are being held more frequently. So the idea is now. I thought it would be important to have this backdrop to understand where we stand today and where we have to go, and what exactly is to be done so that we can take the relationship to higher levels. I think the political relationship, the political part of the relationship probably may move still at a measured kind of a pace. But there is no bar on developing the economic and trade relationship between the two countries. Now, what can be done here in this context? I think both the governments, both the government of India, government of Georgia, and the private sectors in the two countries have to work in tandem with each other, and explore what are the possibilities that exist. For example, the two governments can work in the direction of creating enabling environment, which is signing of agreements such as avoidance of double taxation, bilateral investment protection agreement, and many other measures which can be undertaken to generate a certain degree of confidence amongst the potential investors. Similarly, I think the two sides, the governments as well as the private sector, the industry organizations like Confederation of Indian Industry, FICCI from the Indian side, and their counterparts, they should all sit together and see what is all that can be done. What are those commodities? What are the raw materials? What are the technologies which can be traded between the two countries? My personal assessment, however, is that there might be limitations in terms of commodity trade between the two countries, direct bilateral trade. But if you look at the scenario that Georgia enjoys some special trading relationship with the European Union through the association agreement and the deep and comprehensive free trade area agreement, probably there are prospects of Indian companies investing into Georgia in the manufacturing field, and looking at the possibility of exports to third countries in the European Union, and maybe also to the United States of America, and enjoying the trade tariff benefits that accrue from here. And secondly, I think both India and Georgia should now accelerate and expedite the conclusion of India-Georgia Free Trade Agreement also. Similarly, there are other areas in which, in my opinion, there is a considerable potential which exists, but a lot more homework has to be done. I would like to identify tourism, for example, is one sector. Of course, pandemic has put some restrictions, but this is not going to be forever. And I think Georgia has excellent locations which can be suitable for the Indian film industry for shooting their films. And also, there is a Black Sea offers excellent, beautiful locations. So here, what we have to look at is we have to create a relatively liberal visa regime and also explore the possibilities of connectivity. Because even though we have air services agreement, but I think the absence of a direct flight between the two countries is posing some sort of the limiting factor. It may not be commercially viable to have a direct flight between Delhi and Tbilisi alone. So somebody will have to look at the possibility of a third destination, which is Delhi, Tbilisi, and XYZ designation, so that to make it commercially viable. Here, the private sector will have to really look into the possibilities. Now, in the education sector also, I think we should look beyond the medical education. At present, there are about 1,500 and maybe even 2,000 Indian students who are pursuing medical education in Georgia. But I think we should look beyond this medical education sphere. There is much more that can be done between the two countries. And so these are some of the areas which come to my mind. And also there is a possibility of Indian entrepreneurs exploring the possibility of participating in the projects which are funded by IMF and World Bank, etc. In Georgia. They have done it in the past, but I think they must look at it very, very carefully. And Georgia also is provides a good transition connectivity for India to other parts of Europe. So all these factors together create a very, very healthy and encouraging, environment to take the relations to higher, higher levels. And I'm sure that some of the ideas which will emerge from this conclave will contribute in that direction. And I would also recommend to my government to raise the political level. The least they can do immediately is to establish a resident diplomatic mission, an embassy in Tbilisi, or at least a consulate, so that the relationship between the consular and people-to-people contacts and also trade and investment can be pursued more vigorously. So these are some of the observations which I have with reference to Georgia. And on the whole, I think India has some interest in the region. India's political relations with Armenia probably are the best, and for that also there are historical reasons. We have also interest in oil and gas in Azerbaijan, and but then there are limitations, some factors, there are some irritants. The best part is that there is absolutely no bilateral irritant. We have absolutely no irritant in our bilateral relations, and that's what makes me very, very hopeful. So I think we have reached the point X, and the two sides, the governments as well as the private sector, now must work together to see how we can build upon further on the current levels of relationship between our two countries. I'll be glad to respond to any specific queries which some of you may have in this regard. And I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my random thoughts with all of you on how to take our relationships further. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Singh. Thank you for your very insightful presentation. It is really a great pleasure and honor having you here. So thank you so much indeed. Hello? Where the connection was interrupted, I'm not sure. I was thanking Ambassador.
Yes.
That went well. So again, let me present the next speaker, Dr. Avdaliani, would provide us with regional context of India and Georgia political relationships and Indian possible interest in the region in particular. Dr. Avdaliani, thank you, and please, we're all attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victor and dear guests. First of all, I would like to give sort of a broader context for why we are currently in the period when India, a relatively modest player in Central Asia, in South Caucasus, or generally even in the Middle East, has now potential and basically a momentum. There is a momentum for this country to play a bigger role, at least economically and perhaps even potentially geopolitically too. So first is, of course, the multipolar world, which we currently are now. And multipolar world, of course, means that those regions which were traditionally, for the past several centuries, closed off or dominated by one or two powers, for example, South Caucasus, can no longer be sort of exclusively managed by such external players as Russia, for example. This opens up those geographically closed regions, such as South Caucasus, Central Asia, to other players, such as Turkey, India, or even the West generally, in general. And this broader context, the move from bipolar world to unipolar moment led by America, and then from unipolar moment to the broader multipolar world, of course, provides numerous opportunities for India. And if you put South Caucasus into this global context, you can see that there are plenty of external players now able to influence the regional geopolitics here, from the Black Sea to the Caspian Basin. And those countries range from the West in general to Turkey, Iran, Russia, China, even Japan, and even some other Middle East countries. So in this context, there's a natural sort of avenue, or I would say even space, room for India to play a larger role. And now I would like to sort of emphasize, pinpoint some of those areas where India could play a larger role in the region overall. First of course, is the economic, boosting economic relations with generally three South Caucasus countries, but with Georgia in particular, because of the country's particularly beneficial geographic position, and also because of Georgia's active trade relations with the West. So in this sense, India could be interested in the infrastructure which runs through Georgia, and especially in the Georgian ports, which are now increasingly playing a major role in the interregional trade from Central Asia to Europe and vice versa. There are several possibilities for India to reach the region in question. First, of course, is if India has active and beneficial bilateral ties with Iran and develops infrastructure, and there are numerous projects which India has been actively working on in Iran to build a corridor from Iran northwards, which will go to Azerbaijan potentially, of course linked to Russia too, but then from Azerbaijan could of course spin-off to westwards to Georgia and the Black Sea region. So this could be one of the possibilities. Another, of course, is from Iran, using the Iranian corridor through Armenia and then to Georgia. So geographically, there is a distance, of course, considerable distance, but considering the momentum which we have in the Middle East, and I mean the development of regional infrastructure going through Iran, and even the development of major roads and railways in the South Caucasus, one could, of course, expect India to play a more active role in that sense and aspire to be a more active player in the region, in the South Caucasus. Another area of potential cooperation is technologies and of course even military cooperation, which is of course partly based on high tech and other important sharing of other let's say critical information on technologies. And this is an area where perhaps Georgia and other South Caucasus countries too are most interested in, because each of the three South Caucasus countries aspires to have India and generally other external players as balancers, essentially, against larger regional players, primarily Russia. And in that sense, I think, which links to the first point I was making, to the emergence of the multipolar world, that Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan are looking at potential external players to balance, to basically even out the regional context where Russia and other players are more in a dominating position. So I would think that if India looks from this wider perspective and then sort of we go down into economy, into military cooperation, then you see that there is a huge potential actually on bilateral relations between generally the Indian subcontinent and generally in the Pacific region and South Caucasus. And of course, there's also tourism. And I believe my colleagues will also touch upon this subject. And here I will just simply briefly state that simply as one of the biggest nations, in that sense, this provides Georgia with huge potential to use and to tap into, and considering Georgia's flourishing tourism sector, this of course is, well, India is of course one of the primary goals for Georgian tourism industry to reach to. Thank you. Those were basically my some major points which I wanted to make.
Thank you, Dr. Avdaliani. Thank you for your insight. I completely share a point that Georgia's key geostrategic location at the juncture of Europe and Asia and its role in various transit corridors on one side, and on the other side, India's global heft and growth prospects definitely puts us in a position that more have to be expected with all the appreciations of the underwaters of Indian foreign policy. And His Excellency in particular has mentioned the Russian-Indian connections, and we acknowledge those connections definitely, and we're conscious of those connections, but the regional implications obviously prompts Indian foreign policy and Georgian expectations to be more, I would say, down to the earth and down to the more realistic expectations as well. The conquest and the competition for the region picks up, and I think that that should be geopolitically and business-wise in the region. So let me welcome a next distinguished speaker to hear your views. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you, Chair, for inviting me to speak. And certain aspects of our bilateral cooperation have already been alluded by Ambassador Malhotra and also a Georgian friend. There are a few points that I would like to highlight here. The first point is that, yes, we are in a completely new era today when we look at the international relations. We see, new alignments and realignments. Of course, there's been discussion on the multilateralism and to what extent, India can play, a larger role in terms of the capacity that it has and its huge market that it offers to the international community today. But let us start as to what does Georgia mean for India and what does India mean for Georgia. I think both countries have realized the potential of each other, and I think that is the new momentum that we see today, which is the context has already been explained, but I think there is a greater realization in terms of the expectations and what can be delivered. There is much more practical and pragmatic approach which the government is taking today. So yes, we've talked about the historical linkages between the two countries, the strong basis which has the potential. The political ties are, at least there is a desire and strong willpower to multiply these dimensions of a relationship. And there is no doubt that we see the new momentum of engagement. We also see the opening of new opportunities. And how do we take this partnership forward? And there are some suggestions that I have in addition to whatever has been offered. Let's see why Georgia is so important for India. And today, if you look at Georgia, its key strategic location, the reference has already been used. It is at the junction of Europe and Asia. And I think that gives an immense opportunity to any country which would like to engage with Georgia. Its role in the transit of transcontinental energy and positive economic outlook, make it an attractive partner. It maintains a higher ranking in both the World Bank's ease of doing business and in Transparency International's Transparency Index, which inevitably reflects its friendly business atmosphere, which it offers to its friendly partners. Meanwhile, India's growing global heft, its robust long-term growth prospects and the size of Indian market and economy, highlights the potential of a very strong partnership with New Delhi. So I said both the countries, they understand the significance and importance, which provides, enough ground for both the countries to take this relationship forward, make it much more meaningful. And this is what I think is the strong basis which we need to enhance in terms of our historical relations. I don't want to get into this. I don't think the paucity of time will allow. But there are references of, India's Panchatantra, which are believed to have influenced the Georgian, folk legends. There is a reference of the Mughal connection. So all these things, I think, give a good, background and the basis on which the relationship can be enhanced and strengthened. And I think Ambassador Malhotra pointed out very rightly, there are no irritants. And I think that's an extremely important point. If we look at our political ties, what we see today, the world is undergoing a radical transformation. That is what I would say. The COVID-19 pandemic has weakened the global order with the multilateralism as one of its biggest casualties. Globalization has acquired curative connotation. As a result, hedging and balancing anchored in the multi-alignments are increasingly, part of countries' strategies. This is what we see as far as the strategic trends are there. Against this background of the developments that we see, both India and Georgia have sought to diversify their global relationships. And for India, the value of, Vasudev Kutumbakam, what means the world is one family, and Vishwa Bandhutva, the brotherhood of the world. Now, they symbolize, its approach to global and regional partnership. And I think this is what gives the strength as far as the relationship is concerned. When we look at the India-Georgia, bilateral relationship, for me, as a researcher, I would term it as, at best, modest at this point in time. India does not have a diplomatic, outpost for now, and I think it's very well argued and suggested by Dr. Malhotra also that we need to at least open a consulate if we are looking towards, building stronger ties with Georgia. So I think this is something which needs to be suggested and articulated every time. And I'm sure this is under consideration, and I won't be surprised if very soon we will hear such a news of having an Indian embassy consulate out there. If we look at the economic ties, they're not very promising for now. If we look at the trade figures, it stood at US $186 million during 2021. But I do feel, and I do, see that there is a certain push on both sides to take this, forward. And to that effect, the Joint Working Group on Trade and Economic Cooperation has been constituted, from both sides in 2019. And this will be steered by the, So I think the efforts and the initiatives which are being taken by both the government do give us an indication of, pushing this relationship in a much more meaningful way, where the trade linkages are developed in a better way. And I am sure the signing of a free trade agreement between the two countries can make a lot of difference in this context, which is already in process, and I'm sure this would come up very, very soon. Now, if we look at, the new momentum of cooperation, which you could see the new era of good, healthy cooperation, the initiatives which have been taken since July 9 and 10, when our Foreign Minister Jaishankar visited it, we do see opening of new opportunities. We do see that there are multiple areas. Some of it have already been articulated by previous speakers. And I would say, some of them, as I can see, agriculture, education, tourism, steel and power sector in Georgia. These are opening of new, areas that we can further develop. But the telemedicine and teleeducation, could be two important areas where, one can look at even more, much more powerfully to implement it. And similarly, the opportunities are there for the Georgian companies as well to be part of India's growth story when looking at Asia. That is one. So this is one, but there are a few suggestions that I have. Connectivity and infrastructure development was definitely highlighted, looking at Iran becoming a hub and using it as, and I'm already certain initiatives are in process. But I think when we talk about enhancing the economic partnership, we need to also look at how we can take baby steps. Since this is the new momentum which has taken certain shape. We could think of initiating an annual strategic dialogue, which should encompass basically the energy, connectivity, trade, and regional security. Today, the major changes in the security arena, whether we talk about Afghanistan and how things are unfolding, even in other areas, we need to probably talk about, various issues. And till then, we could think of having a track 2 dialogue between the two think tanks, and with focus on doing some joint studies. It could be an energy sector, it could be infrastructure, it could be trade, and it could be a regional security issue. So if there is a policy paper which the two think tanks or two institutions or the universities where we have young budding scholars, this is something which is doable when the track 2 people are trying to strengthen the relationship. These are the steps which can be taken by think tanks and the institutions and the universities. One could also think of establishing India chair in each other's universities. Now, this is something where I don't see any hurdle, I don't see any limitations which can be easily done. Having an sort of more interaction between the youth. Ambassador Malhotra did mention about the education and taking, it beyond medical, education, which is a part. And this is where I think, an annual conference or can be thought about, which could. And in a situation today where we could do it digitally. We don't need to be physically present. So these are few initiatives which can, provide a good policy input to both the governments, and I'm talking about the smaller workshops where, both sides can come up and suggest as the specific companies where we can get the stakeholders involved in these smaller workshops. And they definitely give you, a kind of a suggestion for the next 5 to 10 years. And this is where the contribution of academicians and think tankers come in. So this is one of my suggestions to both our, our institute can do it. And, there could be online, exhibitions of the traders, even if, you cannot physically travel, the online exhibition of the craftsmen is something which is doable today. And that can be done, this could be one suggestion which can be easily implemented. You don't need to, bring the traders physically to India or from India to Georgia, but this can be arranged, between the two governments, and that can be done digitally, and the demand can be, provided electronically, and that business can be taken into consideration. Organizing various cultural and film festivals, that of course strengthens the cultural dimension of it. And I think we need to see that there is huge potential when we talk about tourism and the youth particularly, would be very much interested given the strength of people. And I think in the next 3 to 4 years, we would see more tourists traveling to Georgia. I mean, if that is advertised through the various social medias and other electronically equipment. So and I would also may urge that we need to have more high-level visits since we are talking about building this partnership in a much more meaningful way. So that is what I have for now, and maybe during question answer session we can talk a little more on these issues. And I think one important point that I would like to highlight here is the bringing in the private sector, and that is where creating more awareness among the business community to show the strengths of Georgia, so that there is a greater interaction between them. And this can be facilitated by CII and Ministry of Commerce. So that is the kind of initiative that can be suggested. Now, I mean, the implementation of these suggestions is, of course, with the government of both countries, but as a researcher, as a think tanker, as an academician, these are few suggestions which should be advertised a little more, and I would highly recommend the joint policy paper to be written by both the institutions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much. And that's two quick points which to emphasize when listening to you. You mentioned several times the momentum, and this is indeed a great word, but I should also remind to ourselves and to the audience that when we speak about the momentum of increasing the political level of cooperation or the economic level of cooperation, we Indians and Georgians have rich foundations in terms of diversity of our cultural heritage, which we acknowledge on each side. And that I mean, regardless of the differences in the scale of economy, in figures, etc., GDP, so forth and so on, this is something which puts us on equal footing, and that really makes us to appreciate each other's contribution into those bilateral ties. So this is the strongest foundation. This is something this is the key premise on which any future steps could be built up when we speak about the bilateral formats. And the second point, I completely share a point that our foundations, our think tanks, could be the harbingers in a way for promoting the various initiatives. And your observation and your suggestion about the policy paper is an excellent suggestion, and thank you so much indeed. I think that we should focus on that and discuss it in more details further on. Thank you so much indeed, Doctor. And the last speaker, also from Geocase, my distinguished colleague, Baqar Palavandishvili. Baqar, we're running behind the time, but hopefully you would be able to squeeze into, say, 10 minutes gap in presenting your thoughts on economy side, on business side, and please, we very much welcome your attendance. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Good afternoon, everybody. It is a pleasure of mine to participate in today's event. I will be brief to cover the topics of economic relationship between the two countries. The distinguished speakers of today's event has already touched upon certain topics such as tourism, etc. I will concentrate on the bilateral trade relationship between Georgia and India, and I will start by explaining and giving some very brief figures as to which countries are Georgia's main trade partners today, and which are the most the export goods, commodities, which Georgia exports in its major trading partners. And I will start with the 2021 figures. From January to July 2021, Georgia's external merchandise trade has increased by about 22%. And in that time, the value of exports has also increased by 28%. This increase was largely driven by the fact that the government has lifted certain restrictions on movement and economic activity, which it has introduced due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, major trading partners during this period, including the previous year for Georgia, were the following countries: the European Union countries, the China, Russia, Azerbaijan, Turkey, as well as Ukraine. So these are the countries where Georgia exported most of the goods. In terms of imports as well, Turkey, Russia, and China play an important role in Georgia's import category as well in 2020 and 2021 as well. Importantly, the major exports of Georgia during this period from January-July 2020 and January-July 2021 included the following category of goods: the copper ores, motor cars, ferroalloys, wine and spiritual beverages, including natural and artificial mineral waters, and etc. Now, important factor to bear in mind in this figure is that Georgia exported more than 80% of the goods to the countries with which it has free trade agreements. Now, Georgia currently has free trade agreements with the European Union, with the CIS countries, with China, and it has completed the deal with Hong Kong as well. The Georgia is in an ongoing negotiation to conclude a free trade agreement with India for now. Now, according to the latest information, the two countries have completed the feasibility study of the free trade agreement, and they have highlighted, the study has highlighted certain important areas which might be of interest for both countries and will be beneficial in terms of trade for both countries. For example, according to this study, the India can intensify export of the following category of the goods to Georgia. Includes ores, metallurgical products, medical products, wine, and other alcoholic beverages. In turn, Georgia's exports may increase in the following category of goods, such as cement, ores, mineral fuels, plastic products, and electrical equipment. In addition, according to this study, there is a great avenue of cooperation between the two countries in the areas such as telecommunication, tourism, audiovisual, and the services sector, including the film industry. Now, India is one of the major players in global economy. It is the third largest economy in the world, accounting for approximately 7.1% of the global GDP. So it's an important market for Georgia. In turn, according to this very same study of the feasibility of the free trade area, Georgia's DCFTA agreement with the European Union could serve as a gateway, as an important gateway for the Indian goods to the European Union market. I would like to be brief and not to take any more time, and I will conclude my speech with the success story of Georgia-India economic relationship, which includes, and this story is about Tata Group, Indian Tata Group, investing more than $700 million in Georgia's hydroelectric power plant in Ajaras region. Shwahevi Hesi, which became operational in February 2020, has already generated more than 200 million kilowatt-hour electricity in Georgia's region. Now, in Achara region, the Shwahevi Hesi project has been is the joint consortium between the Norwegian Clean Energy Invest and Tata Power, and it was financed by IFC, EBRD, and ADB. Now, this is one of the most important projects in hydro sector in Georgia since its independence. It is noteworthy that this investment and the Tata Group's participation in this project was the basis, and it served the benchmark for many international standards in terms of compensation, in terms of elevation of the circumstances of the most vulnerable groups in the region, etc., and etc. So with this, I would like to conclude optimistically that there are many avenues of cooperation which the two countries can explore. And despite that, it was already mentioned by distinguished speakers that despite that today, the trade relationship between Georgia and India is modest, there is a great avenue of cooperation, and hopefully the conclusion of the free trade agreement will greatly facilitate the bilateral trade relationship between the two countries. Thank you.
Baqar, thank you so much indeed, and thank you for touching on the DCFTA. By touching on DCFTA, you helped me to save time for one principal question which I would raise in my capacity as a moderator, and then I will go back to my distinguished colleague Ms. Tanisha Acharya. So, Ambassador, Your Excellency, the question is to you. Dr. Avdaliani has mentioned on various occasions India as the possible balancer in the region. And he mentioned India balancing or counterbalancing others' roles in the region in the context of new regional configuration or multi-vector policy. This is a very principal issue for us, something which is on the agenda of Georgian foreign policies. Of course, we have our strategic trajectory, but that strategic trajectory does not preclude, any interesting ramifications, let's put it this way, to realign in a better sense. So, sorry for taking, this question so longer, but framing this question in a diplomatically precise way, it's a hard challenge. But anyway, the question is to you, for Your Excellency, from your perspective as an Indian diplomat, how would you still reevaluate or reassess once again India's increasing its regional profile and being more assertive, I would say more articulated, because India's foreign policy under the Prime Minister Modi has become quite articulated foreign policy. Do you see any sort of reach out of the Indian policy to the Black Sea coast, including South Caucasus, etc., etc.? So, if I may, I would raise this question to His Excellency only and would welcome his view and his response. Thank you.
Yeah, Victor, very briefly, there has been, there has been a demand, if I may put it, on the government of India to be a little more aggressive in articulating its policy towards South Caucasus. Because, the way things have happened so far, it has not been possible for India to articulate or to spell out a South Caucasus policy, like we have many other, we have Look East policy, we have Central Asia Connect, and many other well-defined policies, and where we say what are our objectives in those regions. This has been because all the three countries in the region have chosen completely different from each other political trajectories so far. For example, as I mentioned, Georgia for a very, very long period of time has looked only towards the West. Armenia has been caught between Russia and the West, and Azerbaijan has tried to maintain, equidistance from both power blocks. India has been, I would say, half-hearted approach towards this region. But things are changing. India is becoming a little more aggressive. India has realized that if it has to play the role of regional player, a global player, if not leader, at least a player, then it has to engage, and it has to engage, every possible, country in any part of the world. I won't say that we would like to move into this region to play any balancing role, but we on our own would like to enhance our footprints in this region. And if I may say, our objectives, whenever we move in, or we whether come forward with any proposals to collaborate or cooperate or extend our development assistance, it has always been a benign, non-prescriptive kind of an assistance that we have been offering. And I have no problem in being candid that our approach is not like the approach of China, where they do invest money, but their ultimate objective is the economic enslavement of the country into which they are making investments. We don't have, in fact, our lines of credit, our development assistance, everything is benign, and we leave it to the recipient country to decide its priorities. Even in Afghanistan, we invested $3 billion. People call it investment, but we know it is not investment, because we did not spend that money to get any monetary returns from that region. So keeping this backdrop in mind, I would definitely like my own government to look a little more carefully on the South Caucasus region as one compact region, and start working in the direction of enhancing its economic and trade and investment footprints in that country. But that will have to be done in tandem by the government and the private sector. So we have to motivate private sector. Government can only be enabling factor, as I mentioned. And there are three important things are there, which I already recommended, that we must have some bilateral agreements on, what you call the protection of investment, or double avoidance of double taxation agreement. And most importantly, we should hurry up and conclude the free trade area. Even with Azerbaijan, we do have some problem on the Kashmir issue, and now and on they irritate us by raising it at the OIC, etc., etc. But we are willing to sort of ignore that aspect, and we have in fact been engaging Azerbaijan also. We have made some investments in the oil and gas sector there. And we are working also on the international north-south corridor, which is connectivity. So I agree with my co-panelists that there is a need, and there is a need for India to be a little more proactive, to be seen there. And if it helps the region in balancing their relations with the rest of the world, that's all the more very good. But from our point of view, we should have diversified relationship, including in the South Caucasus. That's how I look at it.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you for your response, which is a candid response and therefore of much value. Thank you so much indeed. And I'm also tempted, to raise a question to Dr. Singh, and just for a brief comment. You've touched on the diversity, the cultural diversity. You touched on human bonds, and we rightly mentioned a big community of Indian students in Georgia, and every student, if you ask me, is an ambassador in his or her own, and they already built, and they will continue building up a strong bridge, human bridge, in terms of bringing our nations together. But on top of that, which we already have and are witnessing, what you also suggest, I appreciate, probably this is a very general question, in terms of increasing human bonds, increasing human ties, what else could be done in that respect, which Indian culture and Georgian culture would accept as natural and organic?
Thank you, Chair. May I, indulge in the question that you raised to Ambassador Malhotra, of course, the balance of power, and, having
Sure.
got into the theoretical dimensions of the balance of power and the theories, But for me, you know, the practical dimension, when we say, how do you define balancer? For me, the balancer would be the country. You can balance it in a constructive way, as Master Malhotra also said, that don't get into competition with the other partners, but you know, build on your strength, and that is how you become a constructive balancer, you know, ensuring your strategic interests and building the economic strengths on both sides. So that was a small comment I had. And let's come to the people-to-people contact. And let me tell you, for being a student and having traveled as a student, and then as a you know, part of the Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis, that is the biggest learning for any individual, you know, when you visit the country, when you interact with the people. So when I'm saying establishing, you know, India chair in both the countries, you know, having more interactions through younger colleagues participating in these joint programs, that is how. One, of course, is the dimension where you have the students flowing, you know, from one country to the other and making it much more attractive. But there has to be a special, you know, focus being given to create that awareness in various centers, in various, just not Delhi, you know. I mean, the big cities do have more to offer, but I would go beyond and say, you know, there has to be link between the regional sort of centers, like, you know, in Chandigarh, in Patiala, in UP, in some of the universities. So that, you know, is what would strengthen the people-to-people contact and bonds. And let us bring, you know, the younger generation, you know, now, of course, you know, COVID-19 has given, you know, us, you know, many problems and challenges, but at the same time, it has also given us the new ideas of how to stay engaged, you know, electronically. And this is one successful way of, at least when we talk about taking a baby steps, and which can be followed by, when the things open up, the exchange programs, the scholarships, and that is what would, you know, strengthen people-to-people contacts. You know, you have certain perceptions when you read the books. But when you go on ground, you interact with people, you talk to the officials, you know, your perceptions change, you know. And that, I think, is the dimension of the human connect, which is extremely important. You know, business to business deals are different, but, you know, when there is a greater awareness and understanding as far as people are concerned, and today, you know, believe it or not, but we are all connected. You know, the students in schools also, you know, are on the net, you know, looking at various countries, coming up with the questions of, you know, where is this country, you know, who are these people, what is the culture? And cultural exchanges, I think the joint cultural programs would, you know, take the relationship way forward than where we are today. And I hope I have given you a convincing answer, but there are many options today.
Of course.
And practically implement.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for re-emphasizing again all the importance and delicacy of the soft power in our times. And this is very important, you know, which brings our nations together. So let me, before I go back to my distinguished colleague, Ms. Tanisha Acharya, let me thank you wholeheartedly for accepting our invitation. Thank you for providing with your very valuable analysis and valuable views. I have discovered, you know, many things which should be explored further, and I and my colleagues at Geocase, we very much look forward to discussing those issues in one way or another. It's been very exciting. It's been extremely exciting event, and hopefully it will repeat in the near future. So thank you so much indeed. And for concluding remarks, Tanisha, please. Thank you.
Thank you. We had a very successful track to conclave on India-Georgia relations, where a number of relevant and important issues regarding the bilateral partnership were discussed and analyzed at length. On behalf of Ms. Kamakshi Vason, Vice President, Tillotoma Foundation, it is my pleasure to thank all the distinguished speakers for their participation at this track to conclave on India-Georgia relations. Ambassador Achal Kumar Malhotra, former Indian ambassador to Georgia and Armenia, Dr. Emil Avdaliani, Director of Middle East Studies, Geocase, Dr. Meena Singh Roy, Head West and Central Asia Center, Tillotoma Foundation, Mr. Baqar Palavandishvili, Deputy Chairman, Geocase. I also specially thank our friend from Geocase, especially Mr. Victor Kipiani, Chairman of Geocase, and we look forward to further cooperation with Geocase. I once again thank all of you for joining. Thank you.